Hello, Xavier here. I'd like to introduce you to the new TSN command and control systems. This command and control systems, it's a program that I've written in Python, and the idea is that it takes the TSN Sandbox and it breaks it down into smaller parts, and then you can choose the parts that you need for your own sandbox at that point. It will compile the sandbox for you just with those parts. The idea is to make the sandbox shorter and to make it a little bit more stable as well, so that it's not hundreds of thousands of lines of code as I expand it even further. So this is the main interface. You can see we've got all these different systems marked. These ones are currently available in the TSN Sandbox, and you can select which ones to add to the mission script for that particular mission. There's two arcs. There's the lower arc and there's the upper arc. The upper arc, you can see there's only 4 systems that I've finished for this release of it. But the lower arc, because that's where the TSN is operating at the moment, you can see I've got a lot more systems. I've color coded them, so if it's blue, it's a USFP system. If it's yellow, it's a neutral system, and if it's red, it's an enemy system. There's also another color that if it's purple, it's a system that is neither neutral nor enemy nor USFP. We count it as what's called badlands, so places that are more challenging to go and explore. We've also got these 3 options at the bottom, Ordnance, Cargoes and Modules, and I'll look at that in just a moment. So to set up your TSN Sandbox, you decide in your mission which systems that you want to be operating in, and then you select that system. So as an example, if I choose a Acantha and a Shia for my mission to run in, I would click on those 2 systems. You can see it goes green when I'm hovering over it, so I'm going to click on a Acantha and I'm going to click on a Shia. A couple of things happen. The first thing is the outer portion of the triangle goes green to say that you selected that system. So for example, Rima is still blue, Summary is still blue, Tilmina is still so for example, Rima is still blue, Summary is still orange, and Krellis is still red. So those systems are not selected, but it also draws on these red lines for you, and these show the jump links. So Ashia, when it's selected, has jump gates that go to Acantha and go to Rima. So those systems can be linked up. If I then wanted to say, right, I want them to be able to journey from Ashia all the way through to Summary in a mission, I'd look at Summary, and then I'd have to find systems that link back to Ashia and include those. So if I wanted that link all the way through, I need Ashia, Acantha, Tilmina, and Summary, and I get that full link in. Once you've done that, you'll see in the bottom right it says the number of systems, and it shows you the number that you've selected, in this case 4, and the total number of systems that are available in the sandbox at present, which is 15 systems. You can switch to the upper arc as well if you want and select systems there, and it will add them to that list of systems to be added. And when you switch back and forth, it keeps that in its memory, so it knows which ones that you selected. And then finally, just to build the sandbox, you click Build, and you'll see up in the right hand corner it says Systems Added, and it gives you a printed out list of the systems that you've added to the sandbox. So right now in the TSN Sandbox, it's rebuilt it and it's got these 6 systems added to it. If I then wanted to go on to another mission during the same gaming session, but I wanted different systems, like I wanted them to be in Maria and Chorus, I would just select Chorus and Maria. I can see that they're highlighted there, so they're selected. I can build it, and it'll rebuild it with just those 2 systems. So the other ones will be deleted from the sandbox, and the new ones will be added. All right, so the other options that we've got down here are Ordnance, Cargoes, and Modules, and I'm going to go through each one. In the Ordnance section, you can configure custom Ordnance loadouts for each ship. So each ship is indicated at the top, ship 1 through to ship 8, and then they've got the ordnance that they can have. So for example, in ship 1, I could have the standard loadout and just ignore this, or I can configure this loadout. So you can see ship 1 currently is configured to have 9 homing torpedoes, 9 mines, 9 nuclear torpedoes, 12 P-shocks, 3 EMPs, 22 probes, no tags, and 4 beacons. If I wanted to change these and say, actually, they're in short supply for my mission, so I want them to only have 4 torpedoes, so half the complement. In this bottom right hand box, I just type 4, and then I can click set, and it will set that homing torpedo amount. If I wanted mines to be on, say, 0, so they've got no mines to start with, I can type in 0, click set, and it's set 0 there. Once I've done that, I'll go into ship 2 and I can configure it. They've got 12 homing torpedoes at the minute and 10 EMPs. Everything else is set to nothing. So I actually want to give them 1 nuclear torpedo. So I'm going to type in 1 there, click set, and it sets 1. If then I want to give them 1 beacon as well, I don't have to change that number. I can just click set. So I could go through and give them all the same amount if I wanted. So that's ship 1 and ship 2 configured. I'm going to look at the sandbox after this, and you'll see what that looks like in the sandbox to be able to assign those amounts to that ship. If I click back in the bottom corner, it takes me back to the main screen, and then I can select cargoes. So in the TSN Sandbox, we've got different cargoes that ships can carry. We call them marine teams, cargoes, engineering teams, medic teams. These engineer teams are not related to the DAMCON teams, by the way. They're separate. Comms relays and sensor buoys. If you're familiar with the sandbox, these things can be deployed by the ships or picked up by the ships during a mission. So for example, I want to only have 1 marine team. I want them to carry a load of cargo, so they've got to do some kind of cargo run. They're not going to have any engineers though, or any medics, because that's not going to be part of the mission. No comms relays and no sensor buoys. So this will configure it, so this is what cargo they are carrying. In ship 2, you can see these are all default values, so I'm going to have, in ship 2, I want them to have 5 marine teams, but I don't want them to have any cargo whatsoever. I'm going to set that to 0, I'm going to set engineers to 0, medics to 0, comms relays to 0, and sensor buoys to 0. So all that cargo is what their complement would be. If there was, for example, a mission where they had to go and support a plague outbreak at a load of stations, I'd obviously set the medic teams to like 5 medics, and then they could distribute those medic teams using shuttles. The same goes for all the rest of the ships, so I can go all the way through to ship 8, and I can configure all these different options. Finally, modules is a new part of the sandbox that I've been adding. Each ship can choose from different modules, so like upgrades. To be able to limit the power of those modules, I've made it so each ship can only have 1 module selected. These currently are cluster mines and decoys. Cluster mines deploys a single point behind the ship and then can be activated to do a group of mines. A decoy sends out like a little sensor relay that then will attract enemy fire and enemy drones as well, or I can disable it on that ship. So I'm going to enable decoys on ship 1 and cluster mines on ship 2, and then when we get into the sandbox, I'll be able to demonstrate what they look like for you. Once I've done all that and I've configured it, the configurations are saved permanently, and you can go back and you can change it because it updates the actual XML file that it builds from. And then I'm going to have these systems built, and I'm going to build it again. And the TSN Sandbox is now all set to be run by Artemis. So the next part I'll be looking at is how that looks in Artemis itself and how it looks for the actual script. So this is the mission script, TSN command. You can see I've already selected 1 ship and I've got several consoles connected to it. It's also called the Artemis. This name can be any name that you want it to be. It can also be any type of ship. It could be a jump capable ship. It could be any of the other ships that are part of the TSN mod. It doesn't matter. That will not change the script and how it interacts with that ship. I don't need to change the difficulty level. That's automatically set by the sandbox. It sets it to level 10. So this difficulty level 1 here, I don't need to touch. I also don't need to change any of the customize options because that will be set as well. I'm going to start the game, get the server running, and then we're going to go over to the client screen. So you can see on the client screen it's popped up just telling me this is version 9.0. I'm going to select ready, and it's going to load in that ship. And we'll go first to the game master screen. So if you're game mastering, you'll wait till all your ships have loaded in and everybody's set and ready to go. As long as they've spawned on your game master console, then you're ready to go. And then these 2 options pop up, version 9.0 and activate GM mode. If they're not there when you first go in, just wait about a minute and they'll pop up again. It's on a continual cycle, so they constantly refresh. I'm going to activate the GM mode to start it off, and you can see I've got some different options here. The lower arc menu, you can see the 4 systems that I added earlier from the command and control systems. If I had other systems in there, they would add to that drop down menu, or if they were in the upper arc, you'd also have another upper arc drop down box, so you can select exactly where you're going to start. For this, I'm going to come back and I'm going to start in the Acantha system. Alright, so we've got the config options down on the right hand side here. I set up the ship one to have a certain loadout of Ordnance, so I'm going to go config enabled. When I then start the sandbox and run it properly, it will mean that the Ordnance, so if we look on the weapons screen, you can see the standard loadout. The Ordnance will be reset with the ones that I configured it with. If I don't want that to happen, then I have to make sure it's on disabled. This doesn't affect the modules that are configured on the ship through the command and control system, or the cargoes either. The cargoes automatically set based on what you've done. So I'm going to keep that enabled so you'll be able to see that change. Now I'm going to go into lower arc. I'm going to choose the Acantha system. You can see there's 9 sectors there, and I'm going to start off in sector 5, and that's going to spawn everything in for us. There we go. Now then, I said I was going to go through some of the modules and the cargoes. First off, configured ordnance. You can see on the weapons screen that torpedoes has been knocked down to 4, nuclear torpedoes has been increased, EMP is being reduced, P-shocks have been increased, beacons are down, probes have been increased. So all these options were in my command and control systems, which I'd set up previously, so that they were configured to these particular values. Obviously, if that ship goes and docks at a station, then these values are going to go back up to their maximum. If they're already over the maximum, then they'll just stay where they are. Next up, the other modules. So in the comms menu, we've got this channel 1 that corresponds to ship 1. They can open it up and they can have a decoy. So this will deploy a small beacon behind them which will attract the enemies. It's just shown as a neutral. So if I deploy decoy there and go to science, you can see it just behind them. Here it is, D10. So for other ships, it's got a different name, so it'll be like D20, D30. I'm going to just move the player to Game Master, and you can see that decoy will stay there for a certain length of time and then it'll disappear. We're still experimenting with the exact shield levels that we want that to have and how long it remains for, but that decoy, there we go, it disappears and then it reappears back on the comms menu, so they can do it again and deploy that decoy. Okay, the other options, cargo and personnel status, if they click on that, you can see they've got 20 battle-ready Marines. Those are ones that are to do with the boarding actions. They've only got 1 Marine team, as I configured earlier in the command and control systems. They have 5 units of cargo, which are configured earlier, no medics and no engineers, and then no comms relays and no sensor boys as well. So those are all the configured stats that I did before I built the sandbox. Those obviously link to the shuttle operations where you can load up the shuttle with Marine teams. You can go and you can deploy them on a station and then you can pick them back up. That's in a different video. Okay, I've just switched over to ship 2, the Intrepid. The Artemis doesn't have to be spawned, by the way. Ship 1 doesn't have to be used at all. You could just use ship 2. We're going to look at the other module they've got. So they're channel 2 and they've got this cluster. So they can deploy the cluster. It deploys as a single marker here. So that's their cluster mine. I'm going to move the player away because otherwise it's going to blow up the ship. So if I go player to GM, there we go. So their cluster point will activate there, and then in the comms menu they get a new option to activate that cluster. They can activate it and it'll deploy a ring of cluster mines here. So you can see those appearing. So that's what the cluster mine module does as well. Once a ship has used its cluster mine, it's done and dusted as well. The decoy is reusable. If, of course, the ship has them disabled on the command and control systems, then in this menu nothing appears and it just looks like that. Right, so that's everything about the command and control systems. I hope it's of interest of you. I look forward to seeing how people in the community use it, and I'm going to keep developing it for the TSN RP community as well. You do need to use it in conjunction with the TSN mod as well, because that adds in all the extra assets that you have for each system. In another video, I'm going to show you how to download and add this to your own Artemis game. I'll also talk through a little bit of the program as well, so you know what the program's doing. Thanks for watching, and I'll bring out some more updates as I work on this more.